Your body wants to fix itself. Your body knows how to fix itself. Your body is attempting to optimize its structure and function, but your body needs help. It is mandatory. Mandatory. It is not optional. It is mandatory for everybody on planet Earth to supplement their diet with the 90 essential nutrients. You must be taking vitamin supplements. You must be taking mineral supplements. You must be taking amino acids and essential fatty acids sufficient to the cause. And if you do not, it is only a matter of time until something breaks. And then what do? You go to the only medical practice that your insurance pays for. You go to the only medical profession that's legally allowed to practice medicine in your state, the MDs, and they throw a drug at it. And the drugs manage the problem. And interestingly enough, how do the drugs work? They push biochemical pathways. They upregulate biochemical pathways. What are the biochemical pathways made out of? Minerals, vitamins, amino acids, essential fatty acids. So the longer you're on a drug, the greater your nutrient deficiencies become and the more of a drug you need. And then you need drug number 2 and drug number 3, and then you die. And then your relatives are so grief-stricken and they don't know any better, they organize a 5K run to find a cure for arthritis on your behalf, and they give the money to the MDs. We all collectively need our freaking heads examined.
Hi everyone, I'm Chuck, and today we're going to be talking about something that's very near and dear to my heart, which is the methodologies or the philosophies that underlie the Eastern and Western approaches to medicine. I'm a cancer survivor, and so I get asked a lot from folks that have cancer how I beat cancer and what my approach was and if it was Eastern or Western or both or whatever. And it's the most common question I get. And what I want to do in answering that question as to what I think about that and as to what I think the best approach is to fighting serious disease and detoxing the body, I'm going to share with everyone my thoughts as to what I have found to be the fundamental driving force or underlying call to action between these two philosophies, and they're vastly different. The Western system is it's an allopathic reductionistic system.
Your medical doctor doesn't know what's best for you. They only know what they've been trained in. And in this case, they've been trained in allopathic reductionism. Allopathic reductionism doesn't care about the causative factor of disease. So MDs, bless their hearts, don't even know how to cure heartburn. They can't cure it. They can manage it. To the profession that does not even know how to cure heartburn, we have given $600 billion to come up with a cure for cancer. Gee, I wonder why we aren't any closer to a cure for cancer than we were when Richard Nixon declared a war on cancer, right? It's because the tumor is not the disease, it's the result of the disease. But the MD sees it as the disease. They're taking completely 100% the wrong approach towards it, so much so that years ago, I think it was 10 years ago, don't quote me on that, the American Cancer Society stopped using the word cure. Now it's a 5-year survivability. So as far as the American Cancer Society is concerned, if you're diagnosed with cancer and you get conventional treatment, chemo, radiation, surgery, and you live for 5 years and 1 day and then die from cancer, it's considered a successful treatment. And it goes into the statistical record books as a positive outcome. Cancer treatment is so bad, our outcomes are so unbelievably bad that the American Cancer Society had to move the goalposts. And they stopped talking about a cure. Now it's 5-year survivability.
A institution that has allopathic reductionism as their base philosophy for how they're going to heal someone has to abide by certain boundaries that allopathic reductionism demands. And some of the boundaries that allopathic reductionism demands is that it doesn't recognize the spiritual nature of the body, the metaphysical. It doesn't recognize certain techniques like acupuncture and coffee enemas and chiropractors and essential oils, natural oils made from plants. These methodologies, allopathic medicine does not recognize.
The scientific community is signed, sealed, and delivered and bought and sold by agribusiness and by the pharmaceutical industry. MDs are not taught anything other than their piece of the pie because the pharmaceutical industry has leverage over what the MDs are taught. Also, the pharmaceutical industry has leverage over what type of research is done at universities in the United States. It's not medical research that's done. It's pharmaceutical research. The slice of the pie of medicine that the MDs are trained in has no time, no respect, no appreciation, and no concern for anything other than drugs and surgery. Now, there's nothing wrong with drugs and surgery when they're used appropriately. Again, right, thank God for Novocaine and morphine and the sterile technique and penicillin. But is any research being done about homeopathic medicines or botanical medicines or the use of acupuncture or the use of medical nutrition? No, none of that's being done. It's all about inventing a new drug or a new gene splice or something else. It's all filling in the piece of the pie of science that the MDs are trained in. You know, it's kind of like you wouldn't expect a Buddhist to tell you about Judaism, and you wouldn't expect a Roman Catholic to tell you about reincarnation, because it's just not their thing. Well, medical doctors are not trained in medical science. Nobody is. Medical doctors are trained in allopathic reductionism. And allopathic reductionism has no time, no concern, no appreciation for anything other than drugs or surgery.
What I have found in my own personal experience is that in order to heal from cancer, the body has to be approached in a holistic sense. It has to be approached at the spiritual level, the physical level, the emotional level. It has to be approached in a holistic or holism sense, because cancer is not just the tumor. The cancer is the tumor and whatever it is in your body that caused the tumor, because the tumor is just the flowering of the disease. It's the disease saying, hey, how you doing? I'm in your body. The disease is not the tumor itself. There is an underlying dysfunction in the body that causes the body to develop a tumor that then shows the patient, hey, you've got a serious problem. And so when you approach in an allopathic reductionistic sense, you would reduce it down to this person is having pain. They're having pain because of this tumor. And we're going to get that tumor out. And the approach isn't what caused the tumor, so that maybe if we remove what caused the tumor will dissolve. That's never a thought. Like in my case, well, that's one of the questions I wanted to know, and I asked my doctor, and he gave me a pretty weak response, which is that everyone has cancer in the body, and it just so happens to hit people and not others. That's a reductionistic approach, because it doesn't recognize, like, hey, what's causing the body to weaken to the point where the cancer can fluoresce, where the cancer can flower and become a tumor. That was my concern. And so my approach was, I want to solve what caused my tumor. I want to solve what caused the dysfunction to flower. I'm actually not even that concerned about what flowered. I'm concerned about what's making it do that, because I know if I just have that tumor removed, it's just like cutting the tops of the weeds off in your garden and thinking, I don't have weeds anymore when you chop all the weeds off. And it's the same thing when you approach cancer, in the sense of, we cut the tumor out and now you don't have cancer anymore. And it completely ignores, like, hey, wait a minute, why did I get it? So my philosophy was, I want to holistically resolve my issue. Well, see, that's the Eastern approach. The Eastern approach is a holism approach. The whole body is considered. its spiritual aspect, this whole metaphysical aspect, the physiological aspect, as well as just the emotional content, the day-to-day, the whole life needs to be considered.
You want to have a reality check? Go to your public elementary school at lunchtime, get a pass from security and sit in a chair in the hall outside the nurse's office at lunchtime. The amount of kids that are lined up to take their meds is jaw-dropping. You think you know how bad this is? You have no idea. It is an epidemic of biblical proportions. How many kids are on psychoactive meds? It's a problem. Now, again, there's a legitimate thing going on here. There's a legitimate problem that these kids have with concentrating. They're not making it up, and it's not because of a bad educational system. These kids are not right in the head. Something needs to be done. Why aren't they right in the head? Because what do they have for breakfast? Margarine, Sunny D, sugar smacks, right? And then for lunch, skim milk and pizza, right? Loaded with gluten. They've never taken a vitamin supplement in their entire life. Their body is developing in an undernutrified state. And so guess what? Something's going to break. Everybody's undernutrified. Nobody knows it. Everybody's eating the wrong food all the time. There's tons of inflammation happening in the body. The body tries to put that fire out. It can't because it doesn't have the raw materials necessary, so something breaks. And then the MDs throw, in this case, a psychoactive drug at it, which is destined to fail because it doesn't fix the problem. It manages the problems. It medicates the child into submission.
Okay, so what begins to happen are consequences from the underlying fundamental from which the healing methodology, quote unquote healing methodology, is approached. Meaning, how does it go about its business? Well, if it's going to go about it in allopathic reductionism, it's going to naturally be a secondary or reactive methodology, because doctors are not trained in nutrition. They're not trained in how to detox the body. They're not trained in how to catalyze the endocannabinoid system. They aren't trained in the disciplines which are proactive, which are constantly detoxing the body, constantly working for health. These doctors are not concerned in a holistic sense. They're just concerned in tell me what your problem is and we're going to solve that problem. If that makes sense.
So when an MD sees a person with thinning bones, rather than stimulating the production of new bone cells, rather than giving the patient nutrients that the bones need to make new bone cells, rather than supporting and promoting the body's ability to generate new bone tissue, the MD says, no, 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 no. What we're going to do instead is deliver a synthetic man-made drug at a profit, which puts the cells that are chewing up old bone to sleep. So guess what happens? Old bone accumulates in the bone. So your DEXA scan looks better, and your bone density looks better, but now your bones are filled with old bone. Your body was trying to get rid of the old bone because old bone is weak. This is why once you've been on a bisphosphonate, there's a brand new class of class action lawsuits. It's called spontaneous fractures. Now when women who have osteoporosis, or even men, have been on these drugs for long enough, their bones are so filled with old bone that they snap like dry tinder. When you step off of the curb onto the street and your bone snaps into what's called spontaneous long bone fracture, and it's the latest class action lawsuit. This is why you don't see Sally Field on TV pitching Boniva anymore, because the drugs hurt people. There are processes in your body right now that are trying to help your joint to be strong. But what does your body need to do that? Raw materials, minerals especially, but remember, they're not in the food. So your joints start to lose their structural integrity, not because you have a bad gene, not because you're getting older, not because you have a voodoo curse. It's because your joints have lost the nutrients they need to maintain their structural integrity, and they break. No different than your automobile. If your engine needs 6 quarts of oil and you've only got 1, the engine's going to seize. And there was nothing mechanically wrong with the engine. The welds were good, the pistons were good, everything was good. Didn't have enough oil though. Well, when your joints run out of raw material, they start to break too. But the MDs, again, remember, it's not their job to fix it. Nor is it their job to understand the neopathogenesis of the problem. It's their job to manage it. So they give pain medication, anti-inflammatory, pain medication, anti-inflammatory, until it gets so bad that you need joint replacement surgery. And you watch what they're going, the inevitable end of this road is preventive knee replacement, right? Because it's only a matter of time till your knees go. It's only a matter of time till your hips go, and it's insanity. Helping people have healthy bones and joints is one of the easiest things to do with medical nutrition.
The West system is mind synthesized, meaning that these are pharmacological chemicals that are being synthesized in a lab and put into the body, driven into the body. Now, a compound is composed of an atomic structure. Okay, a compound is just basically complexified atoms that are, that are bonded together, and all these atoms bonded together form a structure. Okay, and you are a compound in the same sense as a vitamin compound, in the sense that you're an atomic structure. You're a structure that is composed of atoms. Okay, and so your put together is identical. Atomically to the put together of all of nature, all the environment and everything we see. Everything is composed of atoms. Okay. When a compound develops in a chaotic, radical environment, okay, semi-organized you could say, when a compound develops in that environment, it's going to develop differently than a compound that is developing in a finite and set environment. Let me give an example. If I grow a plant in a room and give it perfect heat, perfect humidity, never no rain on it, perfect water, perfect everything, all the pressure's perfect, the light is perfect, there's very little wind, there's no bugs to attack it, there's no pathogens, it's in a sterile environment, and I grow this plant in a totally sterile environment, okay, it's gonna grow, it's gonna become a plant. If I take that same plant and I put it out, in the forest somewhere, or out, in a field somewhere, it's going to have all this environmental pressure on it as it develops. And the compounds it develops and the atomic structure that it develops as it becomes as a plant will be different in their scope and magnitude and vibrational frequency than the ones that are grown in a sterile environment. It's because the environment that each one is growing in affects it, in the sense that it is growing with it. And the environment determines, in other words, the environment determines how that plant develops. So compounds that are made in a laboratory have an entirely different set of environmental pressures than a compound that's made out in the natural space. And your body, because it is a natural organism that is a part and one with the environment, recognizes when a compound has been made in a foreign environment than when a compound has been made in a natural environment. This is why when you ingest synthesized compounds, your body sees them as toxins, because everything about them is foreign, in the same way that when you look at a plant that's been grown in a sterile environment and you look at a plant that's been grown in the wild, they're going to look totally different even though they're clones. Internally, your body's the same way. You don't know how your colon digests, but you digest food perfectly well. You don't know how to beat your heart, but your heart beats perfectly well. There is an intrinsic animation which is underlying your whole organism. And that understanding and knowledge is far beyond what your consciousness has or is capable of. And so it knows stuff that you're not conscious of. In the same exact way that those compounds developing in the lab are different than the same compounds developed in nature. Because there is a knowingness within nature which infiltrates and infuses the compounds which develop in it. And depending on the environment in which those compounds develop will determine the quantum vibration of that compound. And so what has to be understood is when you are ingesting mind or man-synthesized drugs, you are ingesting foreign drugs or foreign compounds into the body, and the body absolutely knows that those compounds are foreign. Now, what we find is, what's very interesting is, here in the West, it's really a bully methodology when it comes to health. Because the Western medical system has come along and said, first of all, no one can heal cancer unless they have one of our degrees. It's literally illegal to heal someone of cancer in the United States if you're not a medical doctor. You can be sued and sent to prison, and people have been sent to prison for healing someone of cancer without having a medical license, you see.
It's like there's a doctor in Texas, his name is Brzezinski. He has a very unique way of treating brain cancer, and I don't know how many times he's had to go to court to defend himself, right? Which is why there are no alternative, quote-unquote, cancer treatment centers in the United States anymore. They're all in Mexico or Sweden or wherever, because in the U.S. you can't treat cancer unless you're an MD.
This is called bully methodology. It's just like the mob. And the Western medical system is coming onto the playground of life here in the United States, and just like a bully is saying to everyone, everybody's got to do exactly what I say, and anyone that doesn't do it my way, we're going to send you to prison. We're going to remove your ability to make a living. In other words, if a doctor practices coffee enemas here in the West, they will take away his license to practice medicine. In other words, they will take away his livelihood. This is how a mob operates. This is how a bully operates. And this is why there hasn't been any progression. There hasn't been any real movement forward in these methodologies which actually work. And as we know from the studies that have been done, and Dr. Glidden has made this clear, chemotherapy doesn't work 97% of the time.
There was a famous study done in 2004, right? The American Journal of Clinical Oncology. They collected, I think, 11 years of data, right? And they looked at adults who had developed cancer and were treated with chemotherapy. And what they found and published in the American Journal of Clinical Oncology, 97% of the time, chemotherapy doesn't work. It doesn't work. So if the MD medical community is all about research and double-blind this and double-blind that, and, let's prove it, why is chemotherapy still being rolled out? Because it's been proven to be ineffective, doesn't work. So why on earth do they do it? Because it's a gigantic moneymaker. It's gigantic money. It's gigantic money. And we keep going back to the MDs because we don't have any other option. And quite frankly, when you've been pinned with a definitive diagnosis of cancer, you're afraid for your life.
Yeah.
Because the medical industry is an industry, right? And it's involved with money and finances and profit. Most of the time, the oncologist doesn't inform the patient 100% about what's going to happen. They tell the patient what to do. They don't have a conversation with the patient about what they're going to do. They order the patient, well, sorry, Mr. Smith, you've come back with a definitive diagnosis of prostate cancer. I have you scheduled for surgery on Wednesday. You're lucky there was an opening. And then we're going to start you on chemotherapy a week later. Go see the nurse and she'll schedule it. They don't have a conversation. I'm of the opinion that chemotherapy kills just as many people as cancer does. When you decide, rightly or wrongly, to go with conventional medicine, they give you a mountain of paperwork that you have to sign that releases everybody from any problem that ever happens from your treatment. And people gladly sign their lives away. Nobody goes to jail. There's no consequences. And that's why this juggernaut continues to roll down the road, because there's no consequences for the MD.
People are strapped and tied down in the methods that they can approach or that they can utilize to heal. as we all know, cannabis is illegal in most of the states in the United States. And it still has this massive stigma that the pharma companies and the FDA and so forth have put on it, that it doesn't heal, when it has never killed a person ever in the history of man. And meanwhile, they're mind synthesizing drugs that are killing people all the time, every day. And so you see, when you look at this, I'm not here to rant. I'm here to just say, hey, start looking at the patterns. What do you notice? And when you notice this kind of stuff, what you begin to find is that this whole idea of Eastern approach has been hidden from you, has been kept from you. And it has also been obfuscated and denounced and put down and called quackery. It's literally, coffee enemas are known as quackery in the Western medical system, even though Gerson Clinic is healing people all the time down in Mexico, because they're not allowed to have a clinic in the United States. They're healing people of liver cancer, pancreatic cancer, colon cancer, kidney cancer. They're healing people of cancer all the time. And it's because it's this holistic approach. It's a holism approach. What is so tragic that's happening is, we have people that go in and, let's say, like, they have lung cancer and they have like 2 tumors in their lungs. So they go in to see their Western doctor, and they go through and they do all the treatments, and they have the tumors removed, and they think that they're cured of cancer. They think, when all the tests come back and all the numbers seem to be right and everything's good, they think, I'm cured. And what they don't realize is, because this is a reductionistic system, the doctor thinks that also. But the reason why they got the cancer was never addressed. And so the doctor, before the patient leaves, after they got the tumors out, will then inject this patient with all kinds of chemotherapy, which is basically liver poison. And so they've had their tumors removed, and now, to quote unquote make sure they got all of it, right? They're going to inject this person with all kinds of radioactivity. And that radioactivity, all those radioactive molecules, are picked up by the red corpuscles, which are flowing through your body. Here's exactly how it happens. This is how a person gets cancer again, right? They get all this chemotherapy treatment. As the treatment is done, all those red corpuscles pick up those compounds and molecules that are radioactive. Those red corpuscles carry those into the liver. Every 3 minutes, those red corpuscles, every single one of them in your body, is going through your liver. And they're dropping off all of that radioactive detritus captured from this chemotherapy that's in the body. And they drop it off in the liver, where it is stored in the bile ducts, and it will sit there and fester. And it stays there. It's not broken down by the body, because the body needs assistance to break it down. The Western system is not going to assist the person in doing that, in detoxing. They're not going to do that. They're going to send this person home and just say, you're fine. Meanwhile, 24/7, 365, every 3 minutes, after that person's at home, every 3 minutes, every drop of blood is passing through that radioactive liver. And it keeps happening 24/7, 365. And eventually, another organ will succumb to that radioactive pressure, because it's poison. It's absolutely poison. And the body can't get rid of it. And so it's fighting and it's fighting and it's fighting. And it can't get rid of it. And eventually the body succumbs, and the person, quote unquote, gets cancer again. The reason why this happens is twofold. First of all, the reason why they got the cancer was never addressed. Just the tumors were removed. But the reason why they got the tumor was never addressed. So that problem still exists in the patient. It was never taken care of. Secondly, they were poisoned. They were poisoned with chemotherapy, and now that poison is in their body, and it's causing their immune system to be weakened and taxed, and eventually it will break down and succumb. Because they are going to go back and continue to do this allopathic reductionistic treatment on this patient. And this patient is not dealing at all with detox. This patient is just being injected with more and more and more poison. Well, you continue to poison the person, they're eventually going to die.